back, everybody. Rob Ellis, Tone to Shields, hanging out with you on this Thursday, December 21st. And look who the cat dragged in. Look who it is. It's our guy. It's Al Morganti, the man, the myth, the legend. Look at him. Look at him, Al. What's up? How are you?
What's happening, guys?
Al, good to see you, my friend. And you can follow Al on X/Twitter at Nuffsaid, NUFCED. Al, first off, tell everybody, I know you do an unbelievable job on the pre and post game shows on NBC Sports Philadelphia for the Flyers. What's the name of the podcast that you're doing as well that they can take a listen to?
South Philly Sauce. If you're a hockey person, you'll know what that is.
Okay.
South Philly Sauce. I do it with Ashlyn Sullivan. She does all the work, and I just kind of answer questions. She's one of the more amazing people I've ever worked with. The amount of work she does during the show is incredible to me.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah, it's definitely a must listen. So we appreciate it. Al, I want to get to the Flyers in a minute because it's been an amazing start to this season, 18-10-3. But I know you're up on everything. What do you think about what's happening with the Eagles right now? And just in more general terms.
It's entertaining from the outside. I didn't think with Hurts there that there'd be like chaotic. That might be a strong word, but it doesn't seem like everybody's pulling on the same rope in terms of comments afterwards. And, I know you have receivers, but man, there's a lot of stuff coming out of there that I don't particularly like. It won't matter if you win because it covers it all up. But I didn't think that I would see that locker room particularly have what I consider them cheap shots just in terms of what's said about what happened during the game.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, right?
No,
okay, so it's funny, like when you hear Jalen after the game talking about a lack of commitment. I'm curious to know, who do you think he's referring to? Because when I look at the roster, the personnel, at least on offense, right, his side of the ball, I see a lot of vested veterans, Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey. I see guys on the offensive line who hold themselves accountable. I see some young veterans in A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith who tend to hold themselves accountable. I'm having a hard time pinpointing who he could potentially be talking about from a personnel standpoint. Who do you think he was indirectly trying to address in the lack of commitment department?
Well, when I look at that, to me, if you're a quarterback, it's got to be your people that you're throwing the ball to aren't in the right place. I mean, that's what I would think. I don't think it's a coordinator. I mean, we all knew Brown. I mean, he's a wide receiver, eh? I mean, personally, if your live nativity scene is missing a jackass, he's down there at the NovaCare right now. I mean, this is what I see. I mean, you're a wide receiver. Doesn't mean you demand the ball all the time. I didn't think early in the year it was going to be a problem, but it does seem to me like they're kind of force feeding him at times when there's wide. And I understand he's a big play guy and all, but I didn't think I would hear some of this stuff going on, some of the excuses going on. It's like I thought it was strange. Some of it, I got to admit, I think he's a terrific quarterback and a leader. But when you don't win and you have that pouting face, it doesn't come across good. Like, I mean, I'm not, and I think that's just the way he is. But in this city, they read body language way more than they read newspapers. So if they're reading it and they're seeing a guy kick a 70,000-yard field goal and the quarterback is stone-faced, it's like, and you look on the sidelines and he's not talking to people. And when you're winning, it's like he's super committed and he's or all in. But when you're not, it's like, whoa, why isn't he talking to people? Why isn't he pumping them up? Why isn't he doing this? It just looks like that. But to me, it's like, it looks like it's, I mean, when I hear a quarterback talk about, it's like, okay, it's got to be commit. If you're not going to get the ball, you have to run a route this way, whatever. That's all I can think of. I mean, it certainly isn't a running back, and it can't be the coordinator, I would think. And it's a soundbite, and he says a lot more stuff. But the soundbite, I don't think played well in a locker room that I thought was a lot tighter than it now appears to be. The coach doesn't have answers for it. And I'm disappointed in that because I really thought this was a team that was really close. So I got to think that that's where that's coming from.
Al, you've been around this a lot in various sports. How do you view the Desai Patricia thing? Do you view it as, hey, look, if it isn't working and we've lost faith in this guy, why continue down this path? Flip it. Or do you say, this is a pretty desperate move right now to do something like this? How do you view it?
I think it was desperate. I think it had to be. I mean, why wait if you think it's not working? I mean, he's done it to himself, right? In terms of calling plays. Why wait to not hurt somebody's feelings or something? And it was kind of done bizarre the way it came out. I don't know. He said you want to give people a competitive. I mean, I don't know what competitive advantage. I mean, Pencil Man isn't going to. Everybody knows what he's going to call, right? So it doesn't much really that matter what's going to happen there. So I looked at it like I was kind of happy they did it. It's like they recognize it. It was another case to me, and I don't think they did it. Was it Brandon Graham that said the noise was getting so loud you had to do it?
Yes.
I certainly hope that wasn't the case, because that would be asinine if that was the case. I mean, if you're listening to, frankly, people like me and putting any gravity on it, and you're a football coach, that's stupid. But I think they addressed. I think he kind of confused it, because the fans in Philly, the football fans, they know what they're talking about. So they're probably talking about the same thing the coach is talking about after a game when they're going over it. So I'm happy they did it. Look, why wait? If you think that has to be done in the season, and you did it when the season isn't lost, you're going to the playoffs. So I give him credit for that. And it was like, okay, this had to be done. We're going to do it as smoothly as we possibly can, and we'll go from there. But I don't see, if you've made. Look, if they're at that point where they made that decision, everybody in the building knew something was wrong, even if they didn't make it. So you might as well have that clean slate on it.
Yeah, I agree, Al. Ultimately, I felt like something needed to happen, a change needed to happen, right? But have you ever seen a situation where a guy he lost his power, he lost his duties, and they still kept him in the building? I mean, I think that was the most bizarre part about it for me. I mean, we've seen coordinators get fired all year. Ken Dorsey in Buffalo, Matt Canada in Pittsburgh, they got those guys out of the building. Philadelphia Eagles, on the other hand, they essentially demote Deshaun Desai, take away all his power, and give it to Matt Patricia, yet Desai is still in the building. I've never seen anything like that before. What about you?
Yeah, I've seen it with hockey coaches. All of a sudden, an assistant. I mean, hockey's different. They make changes every 15 minutes. So I mean, it's a lot less likely that it's going to cause a fraction. I don't think I've seen this in this case. That's such a high profile, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing for a guy to still be there and be part of it, as long as it doesn't cause friction among the coaching staff. And I don't know the people. If in my opinion, if you're one of the people that knows you might be not ready for something, I don't see why you would have to be kicked out the building if you're more than willing to. Hey, look, they kicked the general manager out and put him giving out socks, and he came back. But they did throw him out, but he stayed for a bit. So, I mean, I don't think that necessarily is so. I think if you're willing to take a step back and look at things from a different viewpoint, and you're young enough, and I think it can work. I don't know the egos involved in this thing, but I don't think that that particular coach could necessarily have an ego where he'd walk out the building. So I have no problem with it, as long as everybody's on board and they're not going to be disruptive about it. It doesn't seem like that's going to be the case.
Do you still feel like there's time for them to get this together, to get on a run and make a deep run and potentially win a Super Bowl again? I mean, they have 3 games left against teams that aren't great, Al, but they look like a team that's still capable of that, in your estimation?
Well, they do look like a dying mall right now.
A dying mall.
Yeah, the malls start like, okay, one building's gone, then the next year you're looking.
Yeah, you're like walking around. It's like there's like the big wrought iron thing is on that one.
Really,
yeah.
It's got that look about it, but they've got the franchise stores in place. When you've got a quarterback like that and offensive weapons like that, I think ultimately this comes down to how good that quarterback really is to be able to bounce back, because that's why you paid all that money, whatever team you're on, not just the Eagles. That's why you're there, to stabilize everything, and to stabilize more than just during the game. to stabilize everything on what's going on. They have enough veterans. So I don't think it's all is lost. I mean, it depends on what you think of the quarterback. If you think he's a real leader, and I think it's going to be tested right here. I never thought it would come to this season, but it's right there in front of you to literally rally the troops, which is why I don't want to make too much of it, but his demeanor, I think, just has to change a little bit, at least for the fans' well-being, that they can get this thing rallied, because he just doesn't. It's not a good look when that's going on, especially when you've got high egos on your wide receivers. You can't have that going on. So I don't think it's all is lost. You got plenty of runway to get going again. That's the good thing with the one thing you'll know whether it is a dead mall. If you can't get past the Giants in Arizona, you'll know it's done. Or if there's enough runway to get them liftoff to go into the playoffs. And when you've got that quarterback, those receivers, you know you're going to get scored on. That's just what's going to happen. So this may take a real tough conversation between the quarterback and the coach and the offensive coordinator and how they're going to go about this now, because it's pretty embarrassing when you've got guys from other teams watching television. And you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of when I'm here, McCaffrey, we know what the Eagles going to do. It's like watching the game with my wife, and she's telling me the same thing he's telling me, which leads me to believe that they got to change some things.
Yeah, for people who don't know the reference Al was making, Tony. So he was watching on the Manning cast.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And he called, it's going to be a quarterback draw here, a quarterback keep. And that's exactly what it was. And it went nowhere for the Eagles. He saw it with the alignment. Anyway, but go ahead, Tony.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm so glad you said that, Al, because, you think about what Nick Sirianni has been saying, especially in his most recent press conference, that didn't really go over so well in the city. He says, this is this offense, we're doing things the exact same way we've done them last year and the year before that. And then you couple that with people essentially knowing what you're going to do before you even do it. I'm curious to know what's your opinion on Nick Sirianni, how he's handled, this losing streak, and what's been your opinion on the Philadelphia Eagles offense and if it's evolved or not over the past couple of years?
Well, it certainly hasn't evolved this year. And what's disappointing is there's so many options with their receivers and their tight end, who, frankly, I don't think got used enough. I mean, instead of those, what I call them, bubble screens, whatever they run there, like you got a tight end there. You can run something else. I don't think it's been creative enough on what they do, especially with a game-breaking running back that they have to be able to. I actually think that they're harmed a little bit by their tush push, and not that that's not effective. It really is, but I think they're in too much of a comfort zone in early downs because they know that they've got an extra down compared to the rest of the league on how they run their offense. And I think that is kind of a comfort zone that's hurt them in their earlier selections of plays going out, when I would like the stuff to be more creative. But I think they're in this thought process now where, okay, if we have 3rd and 2, it's a first down. We already know it. So it's really 1st and 8. And I think it affects the creativity in some of those early plays on what they do. So I've not been thrilled. And Sirianni, I mean, whether he's your cup of tea or not, if I were an opposing player, I'd want to beat the coach as much as I want to beat the team. That's
because of the antics. That's
what I think of Sirianni. But if I was on his team, I might love it, and that's all that really matters.
Interesting. All right, Al, let me jump over to the Flyers. 18-10-3 start. You follow this team and have for the last 30, 40 years as closely as anybody that I know. Okay. Did you see this coming in any way, shape, or form, this good start?
Well, both Scott Hartnell and I were, before the season, said this is not going to be as disastrous as a lot of people are predicting here, because we saw the veterans coming back. And, Scott played for Tortorella. I've covered him forever. Mm-hmm. And he's just too good a coach for that to have happened. He's just too good a coach, whether you like him or not, whether, benching people, whatever. It wasn't going to be that. But I did not see the goaltending being this good. I think Hart is back. We're back on the ice this morning. I don't think he's playing tonight, but Erson's been a real find.
7-0-1 last 8 games now.
The real difference is you used to go into overtime and you knew you're going to lose, if not in the overtime, in the shootout. And now they're terrific in that. So, I mean, when you pick, the NHL is an odd league. Let's face it. Theoretically, you need to win only one game to finish over 500. So when you've got those extra points that you're picking up 2 instead of 1, those are enormous. So I think that I am not surprised at all that they play really, really hard. Here's the problem, if there's going to be one. Like I've got a 4-wheel drive truck. They're driving 4-wheel drive all the time. I don't know how long the engine can take that, right, because it's a long grinding season. And they're blocking shots, which sounds like every kid wants to block a shot, but it wears you down. And it wears you down to be full effort. And people will say, "Oh, you get paid all this money." No, it's a long season, and it's asking an awful lot to go at that high revenue RPMs night after night after night, like they're doing. If they can pull it off, terrific. And they've got some young legs that can do it. And everything in hockey, no matter what system you use, no matter what players you have, goaltending changes everything. I mean, you give me 2 good goaltenders and I look like a genius GM. My centerman can win the Selke as the best defensive player in the league. My defenseman can win the Norris as best defenseman. And I don't really know how good they are because my goaltenders stop and everything. Right. So if that keeps up, they certainly have a chance to make the playoffs. And more, and I think they'll make that push if it comes to it, because the crowds are starting to get bigger. There's some talk about the team. For this to have any talk about this team right now, with the Eagles kind of going south, and you know what that does to the city. It's like, nuclear waste is over Center City. So it's horrible, horrible stuff goes on. And the Sixers playing the way they are, with Embiid and Matsuy's one of the most popular players in the city. To get noticed right now is a really difficult thing to do, and the Flyers have done it, and I don't think they'll let that go if they have a shot at a playoff spot.
Al, Tortorella, he's known as a demanding coach and a grinder, and he puts his guys through a physical gauntlet, prepping for the season and in season. And you even mentioned how you don't know how long they can sustain it, right? This team, although they brought back some veterans, they're still relatively young. Do you believe that their recent success is because they have so many young guys who are malleable and can be molded to kind of, perform the duties that you want them to do? Whereas though sometimes veterans, they can be set in their ways and they can be a little bit more resistant to tough coaching. Do you think that's why they've been so successful lately?
So you just hit on what the difference is between this year and last year. Last year you had Kevin Hayes and JVR, who I like both players. Grew up in the same place with Kevin, but Kevin was one of those guys, a veteran player. He might not say anything, but you could hear his eyes roll if he didn't like the way things were going. So and now you've got kids, and people always thought, well, John Tortorella, he's going to the kids in this new generation or whatever, they don't like to be coached hard. I do not think that's true. And I think you're seeing the case of it with the Flyers right now. Guys getting benched and coming back and having strong games afterwards. Players don't mind being coached hard if they see that it works. If you're a disciplinarian coach and you just bench people and the results don't come, it's like, what's he doing? But if you do something like he benched Farabee for a game. Farabee's a terrific player, plays hard, but he benched him because they had a team meeting and basically they all said, what can we do better? And one of the stress points was cover up for your guy when whoever's moving in, cover your man, have his back, have his 6. And he didn't do it on the first shift of the game. So he gets benched. Now there's a difference here. The kind of coaches that players don't like are coaches who, when you make a mistake, you come back to the bench and it's like, you screwed me. You made me look bad. Then there are coaches that when you get benched, they know it's because you let the entire group down. There's a huge difference between being responsible to a group, to your teammates, and being responsible only to a coach. And Tortorella has managed to somehow get that through. And I mean, I've seen other coaches back in the day, Don Cherry. There's this football coaches where they're the story, they're the guy.
Right.
And I thought Buddy Ryan was like that. And it's like, but then there's guys that's like, no, you're not playing because you let down whoever was moving. Sanheim moved up on the play. You didn't have your man. Sanheim looks like a donkey because he can't get back this way.
Al, who are the players who have impressed you? In other words, the ones that you maybe didn't have super high expectations, but so far have really caught your eye and stood out.
Well, Cam York, who's quickly become my my favorite player. I never even know what he's talking about half the time. He told me the other day, what's he say? Vibes are high. Every time I go down, I got another. He's like, he's got stuff going on, man. It looks like he always looks like he came to the rink on a skateboard. I'm like, this kid's just terrific. And I kind of thought maybe he's an offensive player, a Southern California guy, kind of cool. But his defense has got really, really good. And he's, got offensive skills, but he's learned the defensive part of the game. Not a big guy, but he's learned to position himself. The way the game's played now with smaller players, it's almost like a video game where it's angles. You got to get an angle on a guy. You got to judge his speed. You got to get your stick in a zone to pass. I mean, there are still guys like Rissalina who can occasionally staple somebody, but you can't have all hammers. You can't do that anymore. And this guy plays angles very, very well. And that's he's impressed me as much as anybody. And Forster's overall play has impressed me, but I thought he could score more. He's still kind of missing that ability to have that one timer. So I mean, those are the two. And Forster, I'm shocked he's as good a 200-foot player as he is. It's like it's backwards. Usually the guys like that, they score and you have to teach them the other parts of the game, and that's why they get benched. But this guy, he's in the right place all the time. Mm-hmm. I'm stunned. But he hasn't finished like I think people wanted. I wanted him to anyway.
Al, last one for me, bringing Keith Jones in, he has a tall task ahead of him. And this team, they're playing well right now. And I mean, we don't know how long if they can sustain it, but regardless, they're playing well right now and they're productive and they're showing that they can potentially be in the playoff hunt. How much discipline does Keith Jones and his front office have to exercise when it comes to truly understanding and respecting where this team is rather than where they want them to be? Again, we see a lot of teams, for example, the Sixers, they're trying to play this balancing act of, okay, how good are we really? Are we good enough to actually make a move to get us closer to where we want to be, or do we need to be more patient with our growth? Speak on the dynamic that Keith Jones has to balance with this current roster and being more understanding where they are right now versus where he wants them to be.
Well, it's both. It's Jonesy and Danny Briere, both of them. They got to decide toward the trade deadline. Is this for real? And are we going to move pieces? I don't think they'll bring anybody in if they're going to, and move anything like that. But I think they're going to have to decide. They're going to get good offers for defensemen, especially Walker, maybe Ristolainen. They'll get offers, and they actually may get offers for Konechny, believe it or not. So they have to decide there not that Konechny, but the fact that Konechny's a star player now. Why would you get rid of a star player?
And the trade deadline is enticing. It's enticing when you're winning.
And you could get a boatload, draft picks, young prospects. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. They've got this Cutter Gauthier at Boston College. I wouldn't put it past them if they thought they could move up in a draft to package him. It sounds crazy, but depending on what's out there, because no matter how good they are right now, I think the window, the real big window, is when Mitch Cobb, their Russian star player, comes over in a couple of years. And then you're going to have a guy making low salary, and you can go out and get free agents to go around. I mean, God knows, McDavid at that point might want out Edmonton. Who knows? You don't know. But and they happen to be in a place now where Washington's going to have the end of Ovechkin, so they're going to be, carrying a huge contract that's not productive. I don't know how long Crosby can keep going in Pittsburgh, older players. So their measuring stick will be like the Jersey Devils, and it'll be okay. It's our young players that have to come in. So the patience, the decision that's going to have to be made is, do we really want to keep some people thinking we can make some noise in this playoffs, or do we maybe kind of sacrifice a longer playoff run, possibly, to move some pieces and have some draft picks? I think that they would lean toward the draft picks. I think that, but they wouldn't give up. Making the playoffs is tremendously important. I don't know what the Sixers were thinking when they went through that whole thing, whatever. But in hockey, look at baseball. Look what happened when the Phillies made the playoffs. The ticket sales, the interest, and all that. So, I mean, I don't think they would sacrifice anything in terms of getting a playoff spot. But they may sacrifice in terms of, do we get them the pieces to make a, quote, playoff run?
Al, last one from me. Who's the number one goalie?
Hart. He's the number one goalie. I mean, he's still young. I am curious, though. This is not a, he told us he had, I mean, I remember I was in the locker room. They said he had food poisoning out west. And I made a joke, don't have fish on the road. He had fish on. I said, yeah, you never had that. You go to Applebee's on the road. You want to be safe. But then it kept happening. And, have we been told specifically what it is in terms of stomach problems or whatever? You're always concerned. An athlete gets sick. It's not normal. What situation they think they have it under control, but all things being equal, I think he's just a really good goalie. I am more than surprised that Erson's that good. I mean, he's been that good, and it's not just physical play, the mental toughness this guy has to be a backup goaltender, come in tough situations, shootout situations. And, he's sweet, so he's, cool. Nothing seems to bother him ever. But that's, he has a terrible start. And he comes in, didn't happen, like a relief pitcher that forgets the last start. So he's way better than, if he continues to be that good, they may have one of the best goaltending combinations in the NHL. Mind you, this is a franchise that for a generation couldn't find a goaltender, couldn't win a game in overtime. You covered your eyes on shootouts. So in a matter of a year, you've got two goaltenders. You love overtime, and you call people in the room to watch the shootout. And they can't score in a power play. It makes no sense.
It's amazing.
But it's something that you can build something on. And I give the coaching staff credit. And I don't think that. And Tortorella continually, when people ask about Ayerson, it's like, he's got to know his spot here. That he, when Hart's healthy, he's a backup and stay healthy for that. So I don't think there's any question that he's your number one guy.
All right, Al, good stuff, man. And I will, Al and I'll be hanging on Sunday from 1 to 4 on WIP. So I'm looking forward to a little Christmas Eve with Al Morganti. But you can follow Al at Nuff Said on Twitter and X and catch him on the pre and post game shows on NBC Sports Philadelphia for the Flyers. Al, appreciate it, man. Always good catching up with you. Happy holidays, man.
No worries, guys. Have a good one.
All right, take care. Sir. That's Al Morganti. Great insight there. I love the mall analogy.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. It made me think about you going to the old shopping centers and you see the traces of the signage. When they take signs down, you see the outline of the big K, the Kmart or whatever it is. It's like, oh, what happened to this place? So yeah, man, he's on to something, man. Listen, the Flyers are on the up and up. Eagles right now, they're holding on for dear life right now. Yet they're still 10-4. Sixers are on the up and up right now. Phillies currently in the off season. Philly sports is not in a bad place, but I think still there's a lot to be done. There's a lot to be desired still. There's a lot of food left on the plate. You know what I mean?
There is. And when the Eagles are playing poorly, it just it spills into everything. All right.
Yes.
A little later, we'll get into Joel Embiid, what he's been doing. Nova had an upset last night over Creighton. A lot to get into, but we come back. It'll be NFL time. We'll look at tonight's game and all the big stories that are happening around the league. So don't go anywhere. Tone to Shields, Rob Ellis, we're Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. Time to talk about Flynn Tree Services. Flynn Tree Services is an experienced, licensed, and insured Pennsylvania tree services company that will trim or remove any unwanted trees off of your property. They offer cost-effective solutions to any tree problems that you may face. So if you have any types of issues, they're just a quick phone call away, and they serve southeastern Pennsylvania. South Jersey, and Northern Delaware. You can go to their Facebook or Instagram page for more information or a sampling of their work. Give Flynn Tree Services a call at 610-850-2848, 610-850-2848, or online at flynntreeservices.com. That's Flynn,